The arena was filled with the sound of alien drums, echoing through the massive stone walls. Thousands of glowing eyes stared down from the high seats, waiting for blood, waiting for a show. At the center of the arena stood a young human, his arms bound in iron cuffs, his head bowed low. The aliens had brought him here not for honor, but for amusement. To them, he was nothing more than a weak creature, fragile and soft. They laughed at the sight of his thin arms and his pale skin. They pointed their claws at him, whispering and jeering. On the royal platform above, the alien princess sat on a throne of black crystal. Her golden armor shone under the burning suns. Her sharp face carried a cruel smile. She leaned forward, her voice carried by strange amplifiers. "Look at him," she said. "This is the one they send to fight. This is the champion of his dying race. He cannot even lift a blade." The crowd roared with laughter. The human raised his eyes slowly. His gaze was calm, almost cold. He did not speak. He did not answer her insult. The princess rose from her throne. She walked to the edge of the platform and spread her arms wide. Her long cloak waved like the wings of a beast. "Tell me, human," she mocked, "do your people not grow warriors? Do they send children instead of men? Show me your strength, if you have any." But the human only stood still. His silence angered her even more. Her laughter rang through the arena. "Fragile arms, fragile bones, fragile heart," she shouted. "He is no warrior. He is prey." The drums grew louder. The chains on his wrists clinked as two alien guards pushed him forward into the center. Dust rose around his feet. He looked small, smaller than ever, surrounded by walls taller than mountains. The crowd began to chant for the princess. They wanted blood. They wanted the human crushed. They wanted to see how quickly he would fall. The princess turned and signaled with her hand. A massive gate began to rise on the far side of the arena. The sound of grinding stone filled the air. From the darkness beyond, a deep growl rumbled. The ground trembled. The alien beast had not yet appeared, but already the human could feel the weight of it in the air. The crowd went wild, stamping their feet and screaming its name. But before the beast was revealed, the princess wanted more humiliation. She looked down at him and spoke again. "Kneel before me, human, kneel, and perhaps I will let you live. Show respect to your betters." The human did not kneel. His back remained straight. His eyes never left hers. That single act of defiance was like fire in her veins. Her face twisted with anger. The guards struck him with the ends of their spears, forcing him to the ground. Dust filled his mouth. Pain burned his ribs, but still, he did not kneel willingly. He fell because he was beaten down, not because he chose to bow. The princess laughed again, stubborn, but empty. "He cannot resist for long." She turned to the crowd. "Watch as my beast tears him apart. Watch as his fragile strength breaks like glass." The gate finally rose fully, and from the shadows stepped a war beast of monstrous size. Its body was covered in thick armor plates. Its jaws burned with molten fire. Chains rattled around its neck as it growled. The arena shook under its weight. The crowd screamed in delight. Some pounded their fists against the railings. Others shouted curses at the human. They wanted him broken. They wanted his blood on the sand. The human stood again, his body shaking but his eyes steady. He stared at the beast, then at the princess. His face gave nothing away. He did not show fear. He did not show weakness. Inside him, his heart pounded like thunder. He knew the odds. He knew they thought he would die. But he also knew something else, something no one else could see. The princess leaned back in her throne. Satisfied, her cruel smile returned. "This is the end of the weak human," she said. "This is the end of his fragile race." But the human whispered under his breath, words no one could hear, words of iron and fire. "I am not weak, and I will not fall." And as the beast prepared to charge, the arena held its breath. The mockery was over. The real battle was about to begin. The war beast stepped fully into the arena, its claws digging into the cracked stone. Each step shook the ground, sending vibrations through the chests of every spectator. Its armored plates gleamed under the twin suns, and its eyes glowed red like molten iron. The chains that held it rattled. But even those massive links seemed fragile against its strength. The crowd screamed its name, chanting in alien tongues. Their voices rose like a storm. They wanted the human crushed, torn apart, swallowed whole. To them, this was not a fight. It was execution. The human stood still at the center of the arena. His thin frame looked smaller than ever before in front of the monster. His wrists still bore the marks of the chains, but now his hands were free. He flexed his fingers once, silently preparing. The princess leaned forward in her black crystal throne. Her cruel eyes burned with pride. She lifted her hand and gave a sharp signal. The beast's handlers released the final locks. The monster let out a roar that cracked the air like thunder. The human did not move. Not yet. He studied the creature, his eyes tracing its heavy armor, its slow but crushing steps. He noticed the heat rising from its chest, glowing through thin cracks in the armored plates. He was not stronger, not faster, but he could think, and thinking was his weapon. The war beast lowered its head and charged. The ground trembled under its massive body. Dust exploded around its claws. The crowd rose to their feet, screaming with bloodlust. The princess smiled, already imagining the human's broken body. At the last moment, the human leapt aside. The beast's jaws slammed into the sand where he had stood. The shockwave nearly threw him off his feet, but he rolled, came up again. His breath was heavy, but his eyes were sharp. The crowd laughed. He runs, they shouted. He hides like prey. The princess laughed louder than all of them. Her mocking voice echoed. See? Fragile strength, fragile spirit. He flees before true power. But the human ignored them. His mind was racing, calculating. He watched how the beast turned, how it shifted its weight, how its tail dragged across the ground. He marked the weaknesses only he could see. The war beast charged again, this time swinging its massive tail. The human ducked. The tail missed him by inches. It smashed into the wall of the arena. Cracking stone, dust rained down on the crowd. The human's eyes narrowed. That tail was powerful, but slow. If he could turn that power against the beast itself, he might stand a chance. The beast roared again, its hot breath washing over him. It lunged, snapping its molten jaws. The human dodged once more, sand scraping under his bare feet. The heat burned his skin, but he endured. The princess grew impatient. She shouted, "End this now. Tear him apart." The beast obeyed, charging faster, but the human used its own momentum against it. He sidestepped, grabbed one of the long chains still dangling from its armored neck, and pulled with all his might. The chain snapped taut. The beast stumbled, its own weight dragging it sideways. The crowd gasped. The human rolled away before the beast could recover. His chest heaved, sweat ran down his face, but his lips curled into the smallest hint of a smile. For the first time, the princess's mocking expression faltered. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. She had expected quick blood, not resistance, not defiance. The war beast shook itself and roared again. Its molten breath lit the air like fire. It was furious now. Its red eyes locked on the human with hatred. It pounded the ground, ready to crush him once and for all. The human whispered under his breath, his voice calm, though his body ached. "Come on, just a little closer." The beast charged again, faster than before. Its massive body was unstoppable. The human waited until the very last moment, his eyes locked on the weak spot he had seen, the glowing heat in its chest beneath the armored plates. At the final second, he moved, not away, but forward. He slid under the beast, grabbing a broken spear left behind in the sand. With all his fragile strength, he thrust the spear into the crack of its armor. The beast roared in pain, its body twisting violently. Fire sprayed from its jaws. The arena shook as it collapsed sideways. The human rolled clear, coughing from the heat and smoke. His arms trembled, his body bruised, but he was alive. The crowd fell silent. They had expected an easy kill, but now they stared in disbelief. The princess's face twisted in fury. Her mocking smile was gone, replaced by anger and fear. The human stood tall, his thin frame shaking but unbroken. He raised his head toward the royal throne. His voice rang out across the silent arena. Strength is not in muscle, it is in will. The beast growled weakly, still alive but wounded. Its massive body trembled, and the human's eyes shone with a strange fire. He had turned the impossible into hope. The princess gripped her throne tightly. Her claws scraped against the crystal. This was no longer mockery. This was challenge. This was war. And the crowd, once laughing, now whispered in awe. For the first time, they wondered if the fragile human might not be prey at all, but something far greater. The arena still shook with the echoes of the beast's roar. The crowd sat in stunned silence, unsure of what they had just witnessed. The human stood there, chest rising and falling, his body bruised and battered, but his spirit unbroken. His eyes burned with determination, a fire that no mockery could extinguish. The beast was wounded, its armored chest cracked, molten light spilling from the wound like fire beneath the skin. Yet it was not defeated. Its massive body shifted, claws scraping across the stone floor. It let out a low growl that rattled every bone in the arena. The princess's smile had vanished. Her golden armor gleamed in the suns, but her pride was shaken. She leaned forward in her throne, fury flashing in her eyes. Her voice, cold as steel, echoed through the arena. Do not play with him. Kill him. The war beast obeyed her command. With a roar, it lunged forward again, faster than before. Its massive claws slashed through the air, tearing stone apart as if it were paper. The human barely escaped, rolling across the sand, pain shooting through his ribs. His body was weak, but his mind was sharp. He had noticed something. Each time the beast attacked, it overcommit. Its weight carried it too far, leaving it open for a second. A second was enough. If he was brave enough to take it. The crowd shouted insults, calling him coward for dodging. They laughed at his thin frame, his bleeding arms. To them, he was still fragile prey, delaying the inevitable. But the human heard none of it. His focus was only on the beast. His thoughts were like blades, sharp and relentless. The beast roared again and swung its tail. The human jumped, sand spraying under his feet. The tail smashed into the arena wall, cracking it deeper. Dust and rock fell like rain. The beast was destroying its own prison with its fury. The princess clenched her fists. She wanted the human crushed. Humiliated, she shouted, "You cannot win. Your fragile body is nothing. Your strength is nothing." Her words were venom. But the human did not even look at her. Instead, he whispered to himself, "Strength is not in arms. Strength is in the will to stand when others fall." The beast charged once more, but this time the human did not run. He waited, his body still, his eyes cold and sharp. At the last instant, he moved sideways, seized another broken weapon from the ground. A shattered blade, he stabbed the glowing wound in the beast's chest, driving the metal deeper. The beast let out a terrible scream, its body shaking violently. Flames burst from its jaws. Its tail slammed down wildly, nearly crushing him. The force sent him flying across the arena. His body hit the sand hard. Pain seared through his side. Blood filled his mouth. For a moment, he could not breathe. The crowd roared with excitement. They thought it was over. They thought he was finished, but slowly, painfully, the human rose to his knees, then to his feet. His legs trembled, his arms shook, yet he stood, his eyes burned with even more fury than before. That moment silenced the crowd again. They could not understand. No alien warrior would rise after such a blow. No one so fragile should still be standing. And yet, the human stood. The beast, weakened and furious, stumbled. Its molten chest glowed brighter as it struggled to breathe. The human saw his chance. He knew he could not outmatch its strength, but he could break its spirit, just as they had tried to break his. He walked slowly toward the monster, blood dripping from his mouth. Every step was heavy, but every step was also a statement. The princess's mocking words echoed in his memory. Fragile strength, she had said, but now, with every step, he proved her wrong. The beast lunged weakly, but the human dodged, circling it. He moved with purpose, not wasting energy. He struck again at its wound, forcing it to stumble. His attacks were not powerful, but they were precise, relentless like water carving stone. The princess's face twisted with anger and disbelief. "No," she whispered. "This cannot be." She pounded her fist against her throne. "End him, beast in him now." But the beast was failing. Its growls grew weaker. Its massive body trembled under its own weight. And the human, though fragile, did not fall. His strength was not in his arms. His strength was in his spirit, in his refusal to give up. The crowd, once laughing, now watched in silence, their eyes wide. For the first time, they began to doubt. For the first time, they began to see the human not as prey, but as something terrifying. The human stood tall before the wounded beast. His voice, broken but strong, rang out. "You called me weak, but weakness does not rise after every fall. Weakness does not face death without fear. Weakness does not break the strong with nothing but will." His words echoed through the arena like a blade of fire. The beast stumbled once more, collapsing to its knees. The human stood before it, his body broken but his spirit shining. And the princess, for the first time, felt something she had never felt before: fear. The arena was filled with heavy silence. The war beast knelt on the sand, its molten breath spilling from broken jaws. Its armored chest glowed with fire where the human had struck again and again. The crowd, once eager for blood, now leaned forward in disbelief. Their mocking laughter had vanished, replaced by murmurs of awe. The princess sat frozen in her throne of black crystal. Her golden armor no longer gleamed with pride, but with trembling rage. She had wanted to see the fragile human broken. Instead, she was watching her greatest war beast bow before him. The human's body shook with exhaustion. Blood ran down his arms and across his ribs. His breath came in sharp gasps. Yet his eyes held fire. He could barely stand. But still, he faced the beast with defiance. He knew this was the moment. This was where his will would either shatter or ignite. The beast let out a furious roar. It tried to rise again, its claws scraping against the cracked stone. Dust rained down from the walls as it dragged its massive body upright, its glowing eyes fixed on the human with rage. Its strength was fading, but it still had power to kill. The princess rose to her feet. Her cloak rippled in the hot wind. She shouted across the arena, "End him, beast! Tear him apart! Do not stop until he is nothing but dust." The beast obeyed. With one last burst of fury, it lunged forward. Its massive jaws opened wide, fire glowing in its throat. The crowd gasped as the ground shook under its charge. It was like a living mountain collapsing forward, unstoppable. But the human did not run. This time, he stood his ground, his eyes narrowed, his grip tightening on the broken weapon in his hand. His body trembled, yet his spirit was like steel. He whispered to himself, "Now, it ends." At the last moment, he sidestepped with perfect timing. The beast's momentum carried it forward, its own weight working against it. The human seized one of the dangling chains from its armored neck. He pulled with all his fragile strength. His muscles screamed in pain, but his will drove him harder. The beast stumbled, its body twisting. The human ran alongside its massive frame, guiding its fall. And then, with a cry that shook the arena, the beast crashed into the stone wall. The impact split the cracked armor further. Molten light spilled out like liquid fire. The crowd erupted, half in terror, half in awe. Some shouted that it was impossible. Others screamed that the human was using forbidden magic. But the truth was clear. He had turned the beast's strength against itself. The princess's face burned with humiliation. She gripped the edge of her throne so tightly that cracks formed in the crystal. "No," she shouted. "This cannot be. He is weak. He is nothing." But the beast no longer listened to her. It staggered back, swaying on its legs. Its burning eyes flickered as if it was no longer sure whom to obey. The human, panting and bloodied, raised his head and stared directly at the monster. Their eyes met, fragile man and monstrous beast. And in that silent exchange, something shifted. The beast growled low, its massive body trembling. Then slowly, As if against its nature, it lowered its head toward him. The arena gasped. Thousands of alien voices filled the air in confusion. No one had ever seen the war beast bow, not even to the princess. Yet here it was, submitting to the human it had been commanded to kill. The human swayed on his feet, his strength nearly gone, but his spirit unbroken. He placed his hand on the beast's armored head. His voice, though weak, carried through the silent arena. "You are not my enemy. You are my proof." The beast rumbled softly, not in rage but in recognition. The chains around its neck dragged against the sand as it bent lower. The impossible had happened. The weapon of the princess had become the shield of the human. The crowd erupted again, this time not in laughter but in chaos. Some shouted in disbelief. Others cheered in awe. The old whispers of fragile were gone, replaced with a single word: strong. The princess's pride shattered like glass. Her cruel smile was gone. Her mocking voice silenced. She had lost more than a fight. She had lost her honor, for before the eyes of her people, her greatest beast had bowed not to her, but to the human she mocked. The human lifted his head, bloodied but victorious. He did not smile. He only spoke, his voice steady as stone. Strength is not given by birth. It is claimed by will. The war beast growled, no longer the weapon of the princess, but the companion of the man who had broken its spirit. And, as the suns burned high above, the arena knew this moment was history. The turning point had come. The fragile human was fragile no more. The war beast knelt in the dust. Its armored head bowed before the human. The arena trembled not from its roar, but from the disbelief of thousands of alien voices. The silence that followed was heavier than stone. For the first time in their history, the proud beast had chosen another master. The human stood beside it, his body broken, his skin torn and bruised. Yet he looked taller than any warrior in that arena. His thin frame no longer seemed fragile. His presence alone bent the moment into his favor. The princess could hardly breathe. Her pride, her glory, her command, all shattered in front of her people. She rose from her black crystal throne, rage burning in her golden eyes. "No," she screamed. "This cannot be. He is nothing. He is weak." But her words rang hollow. The crowd no longer cheered her name. They whispered among themselves. They looked at the beast. They looked at the human, and doubt spread like fire. The human placed his hand upon the beast's neck. Its molten body rumbled, but did not resist. Instead, it growled in low submission, a sound that shook the hearts of the aliens more than any roar of war. It was no longer hers. It was his. The princess's face twisted with fury. She shouted at the beast, "Obey me. Kill him. Do not kneel." But the beast did not move. Its glowing eyes flickered toward her, then back to the human. It no longer recognized her as its master. Gasps filled the arena. The humiliation was clear. The alien princess, once proud, once untouchable, was now defied by her own weapon. And worse, she was defied by the human she had mocked. The human, though exhausted, lifted his head toward the throne. His voice was hoarse but steady. It carried across the sand like a blade. "You laughed at me. You call me fragile. You thought I was prey, but strength is not in arms. Strength is in spirit." The princess froze, his words cut deeper than any blade. Her face burned with shame as thousands of alien eyes turned toward her. They saw her not as strong, but as broken. The crowd began to shift. Some of them cheered the human. Their voices rose, trembling at first, then stronger. The human, they whispered, the beast bows to him. Others shouted in anger at the princess, blaming her arrogance. The humiliation grew heavier with every word. Every glance at her was no longer worship. It was judgment. Her reputation, her power, her honor were collapsing like sand. The beast suddenly let out a roar, not of rage, but of loyalty. Its massive body stood tall beside the human, ready to defend him. Its chains dragged in the dust. Its armored frame glowed with molten fire. The crowd erupted again, no longer mocking but chanting. Their voices shook the arena, not for the princess, but for him. The human, bloodied but unyielding, raised his hand slowly. He did not smile. He did not boast. He simply stood with quiet defiance. That quiet strength humiliated her more than any victory shout could have. The princess staggered back, her hands trembling. For the first time, she felt the cold grip of fear. She had mocked him before thousands. She had called him fragile, weak, worthless. Now all could see the truth. Her power had crumbled before his will. Her guards shifted uneasily. Some no longer looked at her. Some even looked at the human with awe. The tide had turned, and she knew it. The human spoke again, his words calm but cutting like fire. You mocked me to hide your own weakness. You thought me small, but as you who bows today, not by my hand, but by your own shame. The crowd roared in agreement. The humiliation was complete. The princess could not stop it. She had lost not only her beast, but her pride. The human stood tall, the beast at his side. Together, they turned their backs to the throne. The act itself was louder than any insult. It was defiance made flesh. It was humiliation made eternal. The princess gritted her teeth, her heart burning with rage and shame. Her claws scraped against the black crystal of her throne. She wanted to scream, to kill, to erase the moment. But it was too late. The world had seen. The truth had spread. The fragile human was fragile no more. He had taken her greatest weapon, her greatest pride, and turned it into his victory. And she, once untouchable, stood humiliated before her people. The princess sat frozen upon her throne of black crystal. Her golden armor no longer gleamed with honor, but with shame. The beast, her greatest symbol of power, stood beside the human like a loyal guard. The crowd that once worshipped her now whispered her downfall. Every glance cut into her pride like a blade. Her heart burned with rage. But beneath that fire lay something she had never known before. Fear. For the first time, she saw herself not as invincible, but as weak. Her words of mockery had turned to chains upon her own neck. Her people had seen the truth, and no roar could silence it. The human, standing bloodied in the sand, lifted his head, his eyes locked on hers. His body swayed with exhaustion, yet his spirit was unbreakable. He spoke loudly, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the arena. You called me fragile, you call me prey, but today the world has seen who truly is weak. The crowd erupted in gasps. Some cheered him, others simply stared in awe. The weight of his words pressed down upon the princess. Her pride shattered piece by piece. She clenched her fists, her claws digging into her palms until blood flowed, yet she could not silence the voices rising against her. Her guards shifted uneasily around the throne. Their eyes no longer held the same loyalty. Some of them looked toward the human, their faces uncertain. Their whispers carried the truth that spread like fire. Her strength was gone. The beast growled low, a sound of warning, but not at the human, its molten eyes fixed on the princess. As if daring her to command again, she felt her chest tighten. The creature she had once ruled no longer belonged to her. Her humiliation was not only public, but eternal. The human raised his hand slowly, resting it on the beast's head. The gesture was calm, but to the crowd, it was thunder. It was a claim of victory, not by brute force, but by spirit. He had broken her weapon, her pride, her name, and rebuilt them into his own legend. The princess shouted in desperation, her voice breaking. He is nothing. He is weak. You are all fools to believe this. But her words were swallowed by the roar of the crowd. Their chants filled the air, not with her name, but with his, the fragile human who had become unbreakable. Her pride cracked further with every chant. She felt the weight of her crown grow heavier. Once she had ruled through fear and strength. Now her rule trembled on the edge of collapse, and a human's presence alone made her look smaller than ever before. She stood, her cloak whipping behind her in the hot wind. She wanted to strike, to reclaim what she had lost, but the beast's molten eyes glared at her. Its armored body stood between her and the human. She realized that even if she moved, even if she fought, she would fall. The humiliation had broken into something worse, loss of respect. Her people would not forget this. Her enemies would not forgive this. The shattering of her pride was the shattering of her power. The human raised his voice again, steady as steel. Strength is not given by birth, nor stolen by crowns. Strength is earned by will, and no mockery, no throne, no beast can take that away. The words echoed like thunder across the arena. The aliens, once laughing, now listened in silence. Some lowered their heads, ashamed that they had mocked him. Others looked at him as if seeing a new warrior rise from the ashes of defeat. The princess staggered. Her breath came shallow. The world she had built on arrogance was collapsing around her. She looked at the human, and for the first time, felt the sting of truth. Her pride was not strength. It was only a mask, and the mask had shattered. She sat back down, her body trembling though she tried to hide it. Her golden armor no longer looked like glory, but like a cage. The throne beneath her felt cold, distant, fragile. She was still a princess in name, but in spirit she was broken. And the human, fragile no more, walked across the arena with the beast at his side. Every step he took was a nail in the coffin of her pride. Every whisper in the crowd was a dagger in her honor. The suns above burned bright, casting long shadows over the arena. In that moment, one truth could not be denied. Her pride lay shattered in the dust, and his legend had only begun. The arena that had once roared with mockery now trembled with whispers of awe. The fragile human who was meant to die had turned the impossible into truth. He stood in the center of the sand, bloodied and broken, yet stronger than any warrior around him. At his side, the war beast bowed its armored head, no longer a weapon of the princess, but a companion of his will. The princess sat upon her throne, silent and defeated. Her golden armor gleamed like a cracked shell, hiding nothing but her shame. Her pride had shattered, and with it, the control she held over her people. For in the eyes of the crowd, she was no longer the symbol of strength. The people murmured, their voices growing louder. Some shouted for the princess to step down. Others raised their voices for the human. The chants rose higher and higher until the whole arena thundered with one truth. The fragile had become mighty. The human raised his hand slowly, commanding silence without effort. The beast growled beside him, its molten body glowing like fire in the fading suns. The crowd quieted, waiting for his words. For the first time, they were not mocking him. They were listening. His voice carried across the arena, strong though his body trembled. You called me weak, you thought me prey, but today you have seen that strength is not in arms, nor in crowns. Strength is in will. Strength is in the fire that refuses to die. The words struck deeper than any blade. The crowd bowed their heads, some in respect, some in fear, but all in recognition. The princess clenched her fists, her heart breaking with every cheer for him. Her throne felt hollow beneath her, her power slipping away. The human turned and placed his hand upon the beast's neck once more. It lowered itself further, a gesture of loyalty witnessed by thousands. The crowd gasped. They had never seen such a bond, not even between their greatest warriors and their beasts. He walked forward, each step heavy with exhaustion but also with victory. The beast followed, its claws dragging chains across the stone. The sound echoed like thunder, a reminder that the power once hers was now his. As he passed, the crowd began to kneel, first one, then many, until entire rows bowed their heads to him. The fragile human, mocked and broken at the start, now walked as a figure of legend. His rise was undeniable. The princess rose to her feet one last time, rage and despair mixing in her voice. He is nothing. He is not one of us. You cannot follow him. Her scream echoed, but the words were weak. Her people no longer heard their princess. They only saw a broken ruler clinging to pride. The human stopped. He turned his head toward her, his eyes sharp, his voice calm. You mocked me because you feared what I could become, and now your fear has come true. Her face twisted, tears burning her eyes though she would not let them fall. Her crown felt heavy as iron. Her people's eyes no longer lifted her up, but pressed her down. She had lost more than a battle. She had lost her place. The human raised his hand once more, his words carried like fire. I did not come to bow. I did not come to kneel. I came to rise, and I will rise until no one dares call my people weak again. The crowd erupted. Their chants filled the skies. They shouted not for her, but for him. The fragile had risen. The weak had become strong. The beast let out a roar, shaking the walls of the arena. But it was no roar of war. It was a roar of loyalty. It was the sound of a legend being born. The human stood tall beneath the twin suns, his body broken, but his spirit blazing. Around him, thousands of voices cried his name. His rise had begun, and nothing, not even a throne of black crystal, could stop it. And so the story of mockery turned to glory. The story of humiliation turned to legend. The fragile human had risen, and the galaxy itself would remember this day.